Today I'm going to show you Sequence orchestrating multiple business services. My name is Chris Howarth, the platform is Cora Sequence. So the first question you need to ask is, why automate applications with Sequence? Firstly, executing processes in a consistent manner promotes user adoption and reduces training needs. The low-code development environment reduces solution development costs, which means you can do more with fewer resources. But my favourite on this slide is that it's around delivering the right information to the right people at the right time to allow them to make better business decisions. I could spend half an hour just on this slide, but for the moment I'll dive into the demo. When the process runs, it invokes 13 services during each execution, during which it assigns tasks, takes decisions, sends notifications, and collates all the information from the service responses. This is the actual process map as mapped in Sequence, which we'll be looking at in more detail later. But to illustrate what you're going to see, here's a pictorial view. It starts with receiving an email, a database trigger, receiving some scanned data, or even somebody filling in a form. One of those triggers causes the process to start, after which it calls out to 3 Azure Web Services to do text analytics on the data captured in the initiation. The subject line of the initiation data contains the name of a chemical element. So Sequence calls out to a SOAP web service to look up some details about that element. Next, the process will split 3 ways. It'll look up an address from Dynamics CRM, it'll get an email address from Active Directory, and invoke a robot to go and get some data from a spreadsheet. All the data collected in the process so far is now aggregated and collated into a PDF document, which is uploaded into a SharePoint document library. Next is some exception processing, which I'll come to in a moment. And finally, notifications are sent out by email and SMS. If the process was started with a user form, then a task is assigned to that user to show the process completion. Next we come to the exception processing, which relies on the results from the text analytics. The first business rule looks at the sentiment score. A score of less than 50 indicates a generally negative sentiment, in which case a task is assigned to Mark, who's a specialist in customer services, and an email is sent back to the original requester to say so. Similarly, if German language is detected by the text analytics service, then a task is routed to Jane. And finally, the key phrases detection of the text analytics looks for something about an invoice, in which case it gets routed to Peter. So now on to the live demo. And here I have 4 emails teed up ready to go, each of which contains things which determine the flow of the process. The subject line contains the name of a chemical element, which is used in the SOAP web service to look up details about that element, in this case hydrogen. The main body of the text is used in the Azure Text Analytics web services, sentiment analysis, language detection, and key phrases. And finally, there are instructions to the robo to pick up data from a certain cell in the spreadsheet. Next we have a complaint message with an element of helium and a different robo cell. Thirdly, a message in German with an element of germanium, and finally a message something about an invoice with an element of iridium. So I'll now send the messages which will be picked up by the email listener. So first the straight through message, then the complaint message, then the German message, and finally the invoice message. Now as I refresh my inbox, we'll see the messages arriving in the email listener inbox, waiting to be processed by Sequence. These messages are now processed by Sequence, and we can see the response messages arriving back into the user's inbox. So where have those 4 processes got to? Well, 3 are still in exception processing, and 1 of them went straight through. So let's look at that one first. So opening the first email that came back, we can see that it's a response to the first email that we sent, which was a generally positive sentiment and an element of hydrogen. The attachment to this message contains all the collated data from the various services. Here it's showing data received in the original email message together with an address retrieved from Dynamics CRM and an email address retrieved from Active Directory. Next we can see some details about the element hydrogen and the response from the Blue Prism bot. And finally, here's a full audit trail about everything that happened during this process. Okay, let's look at the next one, which was a complaint message which should be sent for special handling. So the second message waiting in the inbox we can see has detected a negative sentiment. The message tells us that it was a low scoring sentiment and it may take longer to process because it's been sent for special handling by Mark. So I'll now log in as Mark and open my task from the task list. And from the form that gets opened from this task, we can see what the sentiment score was, we can see what the original text was, and Mark can complete the task by clicking the button. So the next email we're going to look at is a response to the email we sent in German language. Now let's have a look at the third response received. So because the request was sent in German, we've responded in German with a message to say that the processing will be done by Jane in the DAC team. Logging in as Jane, we can now see that the item is on her task list. Which she opens, we can see the language confidence score, and she can now complete the task. The final one was sent for exception processing because the key phrase analysis detected it was something about an invoice. And if we open that message, we can see here that it's been sent to Peter in the invoice processing team for handling. So Peter chooses to log in using his mobile device, which uses an HTML5 portal, therefore all platforms are supported. He selects the item from his task list, opens the form and reviews the data. And from here, he can submit the form to move the workflow on to the next stage. So now the processes from the 3 messages sent for exception handling have completed and we can view those completion messages. Here's the attachment from the response to the complaint message. It contains the low sentiment score, the element data for helium and the Excel contents of cell B1 as well as the full audit trail. In the response from the German message, the attachment has got detected language, sentiment score, chemical data for germanium, the bot response from Excel cell C5 and also the full audit trail. And the final response was from the invoice inquiry, which includes the element data for iridium and also Blue Prism bot Excel reference A7 and again the full audit trail. So how can we show what happened in the background? Firstly, we can look at the RPA log. Here I'm opening up the Blue Prism console, selecting the first entry and checking the return value. And here are the input parameters passed by Sequence. Next we'll have a look at the SharePoint document library where the PDFs were uploaded to. So if I look in the document library, open the orchestration folder, you can see the 4 documents created at the bottom here. You can also tell how long it's taken me to make this video. So opening the first one, we can see that it's the same document that was attached to the first response email. And finally, let's look at the text messages received at the end of this workflow. So here we can see the final SMS notification containing the element chosen, the sentiment score and language detected. Here's a summary of what was shown during this demonstration. My name is Chris Howarth and I hope this has been useful and informative.